It's October 20th, 2017. I'm Sue Cohen with the San Marcos Heritage Association, and we have the pleasure today of interviewing three siblings that grew up in San Marcos. Ginger Boyd on the left, Roy Perkins in the center, and Brenda Butler on the right. Tell me a little bit about what your parents did and some of the first home you remember living in San Marcos.
The first home I remember living in was on West Hopkins Street, and it was on the corner of Blanco Street. And I do remember that whenever it rained, it was like a swimming pool, because we weren't supposed to be out there, but I think occasionally we did go out and get in that water that was on Blanco Street. But that's my first house that I remember. I don't know what Roy remembers.
Well, I don't remember when I was little. My mom and dad lived in the Penn Hotel when I was born.
Which hotel?
Penn Hotel.
Which was near the Simonsburg Creek.
It's right there where the Penn Hotel is, where the HEB is now, the little HEB.
Okay.
That was the Penn Hotel. We lived there, and then when they moved to San Antonio Street, but I don't know exactly where, next to Rusty O'Brien.
I don't know.
Because I remember Rusty used to, I was smaller than him at that time, and he used to pick on me. But then when we moved up to Hopkins in Blanco, and we lived there for a period of time, and Mom and Dad had Daddy had the grocery store, Perkins Brothers grocery store, that they built back in the 30s.
Was that on this street?
It's right across from the donut place there now, on Hopkins Street. I'm trying to think.
Wasn't it called Circle Inn Grocery there?
It was.
You know where the sack and pack stripes.
Perkins Brothers Inn, and it turned to Circle Inn later when he sold it to Peterson.
Mm-hmm. So it was Comanche and North Street.
It's North Street.
Mm-hmm.
Is it North? Yeah, North
Yeah,
in Hopkins. That's a two-story or three-story office building there now.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the grocery store was like. Y'all have memories of playing in that grocery store as kids?
No, we were young at that time. I remember going down there once in a while, but we lived up the street on Hopkins Street at Blanco at that time. And but we stayed there, and then we moved out to what they call the Slime Ice place. It's out on Ranch Road 12. And Daddy moved out there because he built the slaughter pen out there on that place.
Is this where the Rock House was?
No.
No. Okay. Just checking.
He built the slaughter pen out there. Slime Ice place is out there right almost across from that. Used to be a sack and pack out there going to Country Estates. It was on the going out of town. It was on the left, and he built because we had the grocery store and we butchered our own, and he had the slaughter pen out there, and we moved out there on that place at that time. We didn't have any hot water at that. I remember that, but we had Mom and them had to boil it so we'd have something to bathe in. But we didn't live there very long. We moved into Daddy was building the Rock House on Ranch Road 12,
and that's known as the Perkins Addition. There's a strip of land with like 5 houses on it, but it's across from the sack and pack.
That was during the war.
And that's where you remember growing up?
No,
most
I did not.
No, you did not
No, I
live
haven't
there.
come on the picture yet. So.
You're 10 years later. We're going to hear from you
That's
in a
okay.
minute.
I'm just clarifying where it was.
Good.
That
Okay.
was
The Rock
during the
House.
war.
Okay.
Because I remember sitting on the step going upstairs, and they were doing the bells and everything when the war was over in 1945.
Yeah, the siren went off when the war was over, and we had at the top of the stairs, we had a telephone. And we could run up there when that siren went off. They still had the operators downtown. B-Pain, and those people were. She was still there, I think, at that time, but they'd come on the line and tell you what was going on, where the fire was, or what was. And this day, when the sirens went off, the operators saying the war is over, war is over. So.
Were y'all old enough to realize how it impacted your lives living in San Marcos during the war?
We were too small, I think, to really remember much about
Yeah,
it.
well, I can remember when and I was very young at this time. I mean, I was born in '37, so I was, 4 years old. But we always, at the parents, my uncle, my mom and dad, and Seth Carnegie, and John Lundy, and a bunch of them used to go out to a place called Blue Inn, out going toward New Braunfels.
Is that the same place as Whitefront?
Whitefront was on out further.
Further.
Yeah. Not Blue Inn. It was I'm trying to think of the name of it. Anyway, they'd go out there for breakfast every Sunday morning, and that's where everybody was when the reading. I remember because the women all started crying and going on, the men jumping up, running around, and I had no idea what was going on, but they were jumping up and going to get in the cars to take off and go enlist, and the women all hollering, crying. I don't want them to do that, and so I don't know. That's about all I remember about that. Anyway, I knew it excited us. We didn't know what it was.
Right. What were your parents' names, and what brought them to San Marcos?
Mother was born around here.
Mm-hmm. She was fourth generation San Marcos.
Yeah.
And
General Edward Burleson was her great grandfather, and so she had lived here all of her life. But out like on Hugo Road, there's family place out
And
there.
her maiden name?
Posey.
They rode horses to school
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
because
Yeah.
they lived out, and so they rode horses to school when she said she was a kid.
Well, they went to start off school up at that little school up there at Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's on Purgatory.
And where'd your dad?
They grew up in Lampasas, I believe.
And what
Well,
brought?
he moved to Lampasas and from either Oklahoma or Arizona. I remember they wouldn't. What he did, he moved to Lampasas. That's where he did his boyhood. I mean, he grew up from
Kind of what he claimed as his.
about the time he was in teens up.
And he came to San Marcos. How and how did he meet your mom?
I know how he met.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, he had a little place. He and his brother Ray had a little place it was then Southwest Texas Normal School, I guess. I don't know what it was called back then. It's changed so much. But they had a little place called the Bobcat, and they had it was like a hamburger place. And so my mother was a beautician at the time. She had moved into town and became a beautician somewhere on, right now it's LBJ, but it used to be Austin Street. And so she would go down there for lunch every day. And so that's how they met, and that at that place. And then she was with him ever since, so they
Uncle
got
Ray
married.
used to call her Wimpy
Yeah,
because of Popeye.
right, Popeye and the hamburgers.
He always had hamburgers.
Yeah.
He always called her Wimpy as long as he
Well,
was
that's
living.
all he ever called her.
Well, she used to be just a little skinny. She was skinny all of her life. But
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's
how they met, though. And
Back
then
to
go ahead.
how he came to San Marcos. He moved down here to because my grandparents had moved to New Braunfels at that time. That's the best I can remember that them talking about. And then he moved down. Him and Ray moved down here and opened up that little grocery store. And this was around 33, somewhere 1933, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And your parents were living here, but Ginger, you were born in New Braunfels?
I was. That's where Mother's doctor was.
Okay.
His name was Dr. Wright.
Okay. Where were you born, Roy?
San Marcos.
At the old soldiers?
Oh,
And soldiers and sailors.
right.
Yeah,
And-
before it burned down, we knew exactly where our room was. Mother would always point it out. You were up on the 4th floor, whatever.
And you were born there as well.
I was,
But
I was the lucky one. See,
See, they're technically
He was special.
Bisons, born in San Marcos. You're technically.
it's kind of hard. I was born in New
Dr.
Braunfels.
Williams and Dr. Wright were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what was wrong with Dr. Williams at the time, because that was my doctor. That's who delivered me.
Yeah, he used to call Mother Sweetheart all the time.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams did.
But I don't know why Ginger went over or why Mother was sent over. I have no idea.
I don't either.
Tell me about the early years of. Where did you go to elementary school?
Campus Elementary.
Up there on College Hill.
Oh,
Right now it's the geography department, but it used to be an elementary school, and across the street was a Catholic church, and they had a
St. Peter's.
private school. And then, I can remember always looking across the street and wanting to wear a uniform because all those kids got to wear a uniform, and we didn't, and I thought that was kind of special. So
We started in kindergarten. I think
Mhm.
Mother and him paid early so we could go. And it was underneath, like a cellar, not the cellar, but it was underneath the building. And I remember we didn't have mats to sleep on. We slept maybe on the slide or maybe in the wagon or whatever when it was nap time.
How did you get to school?
I assume Mother dropped us off. I really don't remember.
In later years, you might have walked
We rode the bus.
the bus, picked you up, and
And we rode the bus once we moved to the Rock House on Ranch Road 12. We rode the bus from then on.
is that Rock House still here?
yes, right across the street from Second Pack / Stripes, whatever that is, but it's a 2-story rock house.
Where Dr. Milligan's got his office over in
Right.
that second pack.
Well, I bet y'all have some memories of playing out in that yard and watching the world go by that road. Tell me about that.
Our aunt lived across the street, my grandmother's sister, and they had a dairy across the street. And
That
So-
little building is still there. That
Yeah.
little rock building that he had cows in where he milked back there.
I think one of the things I remember most about that is the caterpillars that built on the old big old tree that was out front, and we could pick them off of the tree. I don't know if Roy remembers that, but it was kind of fun. I don't remember much else, but
Wasn't there a baseball bat somewhere around the,
Baseball bat?
where Bubba was practicing his baseball and
Well,
you
this
lost
is-
your
No.
front teeth?
No,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
baseball.
Okay, that was another.
Oh, yeah.
it was not a baseball bat. It was a popcorn puck.
Well,
Oh,
Wait,
Roy knocked your front teeth out?
Yes, he did. On my birthday.
Let's
it was
hear
a total accident, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How
He
old
thought I
were
was
you?
somebody else, and they were bigger than me.
I
So
was-
when they came around the corner, I
Roy
must have
Holtz
been.
and Dr. Roy Holtz now, but Roy Holtz and James lived up the street from us up there, up the road. And we were good friends. We were do flags to tell each other what we were doing out on the yard, or try to get our parents, the other one to ask their parents if they could come down or whatever, But this was her birthday, and we were not. Roy had made me mad somehow. I don't remember. Sonny, I called him Sonny. So Sonny had made me mad, and
that's what they called
so I
it.
decided I'd fix him. And but Ginger come around the corner instead of Sonny. So I hit her.
Then everybody went home. I do remember that.
And what happened then? Did you get in trouble?
Well, Daddy let me know,
Yes,
but she.
yes, but I had no
he was
teeth
very
for quite a
strict.
while because I wasn't old enough to lose my teeth. So I was toothless for a while, but my 2 front teeth were gone.
Of course, what were you, like 7? And Gigi
I had
was
to
like
been-
5 and something like
I
that?
must have been about 7. I don't recall how old I was at the time.
Well, I was going to hit Sonny right in the belly, and her head was about the same height. Sonny was a little taller than me. And anyway, that's
We get to hear that story.
That's a pretty.
Gigi always brings it up.
I would too.
Yeah,
I bet your mama wasn't happy either.
it was a very memorable
No,
event.
I,
A memorable birthday.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
one end of me remembered it for quite a while.
I bet.
I can imagine.
Mother used to like Halloween.
Okay.
We had a big Halloween party one year, and I don't remember how the kids got up in the back of the truck, but Mother was standing outside with a glove on with ice spilled and the dripping off, water dripping, and she would tell them it was blood when they were down. They were all dressed up in costumes, and it was fun. Mother loved to do that kind of decorating. She
always
put
loved
strings all in the living room so that they'd think there were cobwebs when they walked through. So
They used to
that was
have on
fun.
the square, and I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
that they've seen them. I don't remember this too, but they used to have it on the square. A Halloween party. Everybody dress up, the kids, and they'd have a contest down there. And Mother made Ginger and I black cat costumes with a long tail, and we went all down there that night, and Ginger and I won the contest. So, but then we decided we was going to dress up the next night the same way when Daddy come home, because he come home after dark, and there was a hedge right next to the house, and he drove up, and when he got out of the truck, Ginger and I jumped out after him, and we like to not survived it.
Everybody kept their teeth through that
Oh,
one.
yeah,
We were fortunate. So we didn't do that again.
Yeah.
no.
But we were on the square with those those black cat things. They were satin Mother had made, and she lost us in the crowd. There was a bunch of and all of a sudden she looks up and on the stage there's Roy and I, because we had won the prize for the best costume. And Roy hated it because they kept poking his tail. They would grab his tail, the kids would, and they'd poke him with his tail because it had a wire in it, you know.
Do you remember what the prize was that you won?
We just have a certificate. I still have that.
Really?
Yeah, we got a certificate, but I don't remember any prize unless there was
No, I don't
candy
think we got
involved.
any.
I don't
Probably.
recall that.
Well, it sounds like holidays were exciting at your house. So you guys were around 10, and then baby Brenda came along. How did that rock your world?
Well, I don't recall it rocking it too much. We were kind of glad to get her.
Okay.
It,
You know, but-
well, she
Yeah.
speak for yourself.
She did change our
He
life.
he had to take care of the time, so he has many
He did-
tales of
He
that.
did change our life a little bit, but
Mhm.
and when we got older, you know, if we had a date, she was going to. She wanted to go to.
So they had a
She went-
built-in chaperone.
Yeah, she went a lot of times with me with my dates to the movies or whatever. And
Where did you go on dates in the 50s in San Marcos?
Mostly to the Holiday Theater. That's about all there was around to go.
The Palace and the Holiday.
Yeah, the Palace. And we used to go when we were younger. We went to the Palace. They had Mickey Mouse for a nickel, and that was always fun for us to get to go because we lived out, and so we weren't as conveniently located to get to those things.
Did you have a car when you were a teenager? What was your car?
I had I had a few of them. Yeah, I had first started off with a little Jeepster station wagon, Willis, and it stayed full all the time and had a tailgate, and the car would be just barely going down the road because I'd have it full of people that we went to school with, you know.
I do remember we pulled up at Wallen's one time to get some hamburgers or something, and this guy pulled up next to us and he says, "Oh, now I know what sardines feel like," because we've got quite a few people in the car.
Did you have a car, Ginger, or did you just go everywhere with Roy?
I didn't have a car until I was a junior, I guess. I did have a little English Austin. I do, and it ran real good, and I was happy with it. Got me to and from, and I enjoyed it. Had a sunroof, so I thought I was uptown, I guess, because not every kid had a
Right.
car.
Lots of kids didn't have
Yeah,
a car.
a lot of cars. And occasionally, I made a mistake of putting my car keys underneath the mat in the car, so I wouldn't lose them. And occasionally, one of my classmates would take my car, off and do something else during the class, when he was supposed to be at school. I don't know. All I remember is coming out one day and looking, I don't think I parked here. And then looking up, and there he's coming down the street in my car. And then those same kids put my car, at the high school we had then.
The high school was on 123 back then?
No, it was on
It was
Hutchison and
So the old Lamar School is
Yes,
where y'all
old
went to
Lamar.
high school?
Yeah, that was our high
Okay.
school. We didn't have a cafeteria there either.
And you went to the new high school, Brenda?
yes, well,
Okay.
yes, on 120.
But
Okay.
it was an incline like this. It was with a cement border that went up, and they put my car up between the building, the auditorium, and this curb, and it was about that high off the ground. And I remember Principal Jarborough called me down to the office and wanted to know how my car got up there. And I said, I didn't even know it was up there. But then he found out which of the boys had put it up there. And then he had to take it down off that curb. That was a lot of fun things. They didn't hurt anybody, but they just thought it would be a big joke, So I do remember it well, so it must have made a big memory in my head.
What kind of activities were you involved in high school?
We were in the band. Roy and I both were in the band.
I played little basketball and stuff, but I didn't play. Daddy didn't want me to play, so after I was a junior, well, I made me quit trying to play after my junior year. So.
Well, my dad had a restaurant by then, and he just finished the grocery store, which was just 2 doors down from this building. And so I think my brother and sister worked there a whole lot, there.
What was the name of that restaurant?
Oh, Smoke Shack. That was off of Guadalupe Street.
Mm-hmm.
But during the war, Mother and him had the grocery store down here, right next to
Piggly
Hartley's.
Wiggly.
Hartley's, Piggly Wiggly. And Mother and them worked long hours during the war, counting the coupons for sugar or whatever.
The rations.
Yeah,
The rations.
and I still have some of those ration books that Mother had.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think, how they had to have a little coupon for every little thing. And we all had a book, all of us. So when they bought something for us, they had to take it, I guess, out of our coupon book. And of course, a lot of times you could buy tires at that time. But if you had that type of business, then they were more readily available to you because you had work to get to and stuff.
Now this is when they had this Perkins Brothers grocery store down off of Hopkins in North. Well, they bought this store up here, called it Perkins Brothers Cash and Carry, and they sold the one down on Hopkins and North to Pete Peterson, and he named it Swing In Grocery. And while we had this grocery store up here it's 2 doors down from here, or 3 doors down from here. And
That was the Cash and Carry. What was the name of that one? The Cash and Carry?
Cash and
Grocery.
Carry.
I think it's like where Valentino's Pizza is right now. I think
that's
that
it.
building.
That's
And your
right.
dad was in business with his brother,
Yes.
Right.
and your mother worked there as well.
Right.
Yes. Uncle Ray was not there during the war because he was in the Navy.
But Dad still
But Dad
has
was too
named for
old.
him.
And he had 2 children, so they wouldn't take him. So he ran the grocery store, he and Mother. But Uncle Ray was in the Navy at that time.
At that grocery store, we would come back and he'd set us back on the bean sacks, and then we got a year or so older. Well, had us in there weighing up beans and putting them in certain pounded sacks and stuff, so they could put them out on the shelves. And we did that when we decided that we just had too much. We'd go back there and play until he come back and decided we were supposed to be working.
Yeah.
that was a good memory there, because you come up the street, it was Piggly Wiggly next door, a competitor. Then you come up to the barbershop, Slim's barbershop, which is still there. The barbershop is, and right next to it was
Ice cream parlor.
an ice cream parlor, and then next door to it was I don't know if that was, it was in between this one. I guess it was.
Dad used to take us up there for a pint of ice cream.
Yeah, for
And
Kyle's
we'd
office.
all sit
And
there
then-
and eat ice cream. So it was fun.
Well, grocery stores have changed. People had your parents knew all the customers and they signed for their groceries. Tell us
Yeah,
about
and
how
they
different.
delivered the groceries also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, J.W. Gary and then Shorty Grumbles, and they were sort of delivery boys for Dad. And they worked there for him. The Vogelmans, and then we went on up the street to, I can't remember exactly all of them, but I know Ducaniere's where it was, 'cause we knew where Vogelmans and Ducaniere's, because there were
Opposite corners.
dime stores, they called them, 5 and dime. And but if you went on down the street, that was Pennington's and the Delights, and you had the other market down further, right across from the Palace Theater. And I'm trying to think, it's Corey Smith's place at that time.
Younger's Cafe used to be there where the bus stop was.
Yeah, Younger's Cafe was where the bus station is in the middle of the block going up Hutchinson. It's in the middle of the block on the right across from the old fire station, somewhat. Trying to think, right on the corner there was, I'm trying to think, the filling station was,
Taylor's was later, but
Huh?
it was a Ford,
no, it was,
Gov, wasn't it?
no, it was, I can't think of the name of it right now, but there was a filling station, I'll think of it in a minute. But you went on up the street, it was Mr. Ottmer's wrecking yard, and then on up the corner was the Dodge place. Across the street was the Pontiac place, Kirchville's. And
Scrutchins was over there on,
what
street is that?
on San Antonio Street. On Hopkins Street.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of the commerce was in the downtown area or within a block of there at that time.
One thing about the new cars, it was always exciting because they covered the windows with sheets and stuff, and there was just a certain day they would display them, and so you had to wait to see what they were going to look like, because it's not like today where they put them out everywhere. Their one model comes out before the other one is ended. There you waited for that new model to come out, and nobody knew what it was going to look like. So it was kind of exciting to, they would cover all those windows. And,
We had radio. We didn't have TV or
Yeah.
anything until after Brenda was born. And I was trying to tell you, Bass's drugstore used to be right there on the corner where the First Federal was, and next to it was another clothing store, and I can't remember the name of that one, but it was
Jacob Smith's.
Jacob Smith, yeah, Jacob Smith's. But then you go the other way, you go up to Miller's Drugstore and part of Barber Shop and Aiken's Jewelry, and then the post office was right there on the corner, and they tore it down and built the Frost Bank.
So your dad had the grocery, then he opened a restaurant. Did he keep the grocery open, or he closed the grocery and went into the restaurant business?
Well, he actually started off, he moved the grocery store down to where the restaurant was, and then they decided to open up a restaurant and then close out the grocery store because he wasn't getting paid for all of his tickets that the people would sign.
Well, Mom was telling me she did an interview with somebody once, and this was written down. I read it before this week, and she said, "I remember Dad had such a kind heart. Is that there'd be people here in town that couldn't afford the groceries for whatever reason, and Dad would just, say, 'You can pay me when you can, pay me when you can,' and she still kept till her deathbed receipts from people that are still living in town, but that never, they probably just didn't get on their feet. But I remember that being a real important thing to Mom, is that knowing that she and Dad had a kind heart to be able to help these people in their time. So that's what he's talking about. They didn't pay, so they had to close down one of them, so they'd have it. Restaurant business, you pay as you eat. so
there was no credit.
That's right, no credit there.
But he also had a barbecue place down off of Cheatham, the corner of Cheatham and LBJ now.
So y'all ate pretty good growing up. But he expected you to work. Y'all worked in the restaurant?
Yes, when he opened the restaurant up, we were probably, I was probably a sophomore or junior, and Ginger wasn't behind me. And at lunch, we'd run down at lunch and work the rush hour with them, and then eat a bite and run back to school. And this was an everyday occurrence. And then as I got a little older, I'd go down and help open up. He opened up another place in my senior year out on the Operator Springs and Ranch Road 35.
Was Highway 81 at that time, was it not?
It was 81, US 81 at that time. And I would go out run it in the afternoons, but I would help him open up in the morning. And then we had to go get the help in the morning to bring in her, and Ginger to go get them, or I would go get them. And later on I got a Studebaker and painted it bittersweet red. And it put loud pipes on it, which the law didn't like around down. But she took it one morning to go get some of the help, and there was a car parked on the side of the road there on San Antonio Street, and she was following a car, all right, and the car went around that car park, but she didn't.
Well, actually, I should have had my pillow, which I usually always had, but somebody took my pillow out, so it's hard to reach the pedals, and you had to move over to the right to hit the dip to get around that, unless you hit that dip. Well, there was a big truck in front of me, and I didn't hit the car on the side of, and I did hit him.
You wrecked Roy's car. Got even for the teeth, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe so.
But I don't remember the man's name that I hit his car, but he knew Daddy, and he said, well, I'll take it up with him. But then I could remember where Bessie lived. I drove around, I don't know how many times around that block thinking, where is Bessie now? I was so upset about that, hitting that car, I couldn't remember where
Is this
she
the
lived.
same car when you stopped that smoke came out?
No.
Bubba
That's
looked
not
like he
the
was
same
coming
one.
through.
Way later.
Yeah, later.
That was some of his auto workings.
We
Days.
You
But
didn't
this-
tell about your
this-
experience with railroad track, with
Oh,
Dad
yeah.
having
Well,
the train hitting y'all. Have y'all talked about
no,
that?
we'll just a minute.
Okay.
I'll go backwards.
Yeah, okay. Backwards in time.
Because I started it a while ago. I said we had that little barbecue place down on the square, down on Cheatham. We'd come back from New Braunfels, and my uncle just come back from the war, and he bought him a new Chevrolet, Fleetwood Chevrolet, standard shift, and Daddy and Mom had bought them during the war, bought them an automatic transmission vehicle. They just a new thing, and that's what he got used to driving. And we were in the back seat, and one of Daddy's help was sitting in the front seat with him. And we'd been sitting there at that place. He went into that barbecue place to check on something, and we were sitting there at the side of that red light now, but it wasn't a red light then. Watching the bells and stuff go off, that there was a train on the track. And they used to park those trains up pretty close to the crossing so you couldn't see very far down the track. And we told Daddy when we got back in Red Baines was Red Baines is the man that was with Daddy. And they got in the car and we told train on the track, the bell's been going off ever since you've been in there. Well, we come easing up to the track and got right up to the track. Well, Daddy was going to gun it to go across, and when he did, it was in second gear. I don't know why he had it in second gear, but anyway, it just jumped and stalled, and he couldn't get it started. And we were hit right in the middle of the track. And Red Baines jumped out and run off, and Daddy reached in the back seat. It was a two-door, and he threw Ginger all the way on underneath that seed house at the time, which later on was a feed store over there. And then when he jumped, he threw me, and I went straight up and come down, and I hit the track where the car had been, and then the car hit Daddy.
Actually tore his britches in the back.
It bruised him up here pretty bad in the backside and tore his clothes off of him in the backside. We were found out anyway. That's what. But I couldn't get up at that time. It hurt my leg, so we went. They took us to the doctor, and we all got checked out. Well, Ginger was all right because she hit in that seat house. But that had to be somewhere around 40 feet. He threw her almost. But he threw me straight up and come back down, and I hit that sidetrack with my leg, and it crushed this part of my leg. And Dr. Williams and Dr. Wright, was her where she was born, got together. They didn't have any bone specialists or anything around here at that time, so they just pulled my leg together and wrapped it. Put it back to what they thought. They just wrapped it where I couldn't bend it. I had to duck waddle for a while.
Had a little place there.
Yeah, I've still got a place right here. But I did that for probably 3 or 4 months and duck waddled around. And it come up that he had to cut the skin a little bit behind my leg where it sort of grew together while I was. But I got up, got exercise and take some stuff. And whatever they did, they knew what they were doing. But or they didn't know. Whatever it was, it worked out.
Dad didn't know his back was exposed. So when he went into the doctors,
That was the least of his worries, I guess.
No,
he didn't realize he was exposed. But when he got there, they said, "Oh, well, your back of your pants are all out because it had hit the they used to have those things on the front ornaments on the car, and it hit that in when he was trying to get away from the car after he had thrown us out."
It bruised him up pretty bad. I mean, it was.
I just remember he saying, "Well, I didn't even know," and they told me my pants were all torn in the back. So.
Yeah, that's upside.
That's quite the experience.
I do remember saying Aunt Rob was going to be really upset. That was Uncle Ray's wife. So
The
new car.
So you guys are here for high school reunions. Roy in 1956, Ginger 1957, and Brenda 1967.
Yes.
So it's almost like you grew up in a different time period and had different memories and experiences. What were some of your I mean, they had radio, you had TV, you probably had different clothes, different...
Of course, it was a little TV, a little black and white. Well, when I was little, I got to sit on the bean sacks at the smoke shack, and so I guess I was doing that. My dad would keep me outside, and he'd say, "Go out there, and I'll pay you a penny for every fly that you kill." Now, he didn't say where. I mean, I was across the alley at I don't know what's there now, but no, I do.
Dobbins
It used to be
behind.
Subtle
Subtle
furniture store, but now there's a restaurant there, and you park in the back. But I can't remember what the name of it is. But anyway, I'd walk around everywhere just trying to kill flies, and I had a little bag that I'd keep them in, and I'd earn my little money, and then we get to go up to Duquesne's, and Dad would take me up there because I was still too young to go up by myself, and so we go to Duquesne's, and I loved that place. I mean, I don't know that it had anything for anybody else, but it was like a heaven for kids. And I do have a really neat memory of, there was a man, I don't know who he was, and I've tried to find out his family, but he would be on the corner of Duquesne's, especially during the holiday season, and he'd play an accordion, and Dad would always go up and try to give him money, you know, because he'd be playing for money to earn some stuff, and that was a fond memory of, I always knew at Christmas we were going to do that, and Dad waited till Christmas Eve to do his shopping, so that was great for me because we'd go in there, and I'm sure I got like $2 worth of stuff and thought, you know, yeah, it was like great. But anyway, we went to the movies too. That's what we had when I was a kid. So, but I got to go by myself, not as a 4-year-old, but my friends at age 10 or 11, you know, we could walk around the town and get to see movies. And they used to have at the Holiday Theater and at the Palace on Saturdays, alternating Saturdays, they'd have like a talent contest. Now, I was never talented like that, but I loved to go and, you know, cheer the friends on. But we'd have 15 or 20 kids at one time, you know, all meeting together and going. And because at that time, you know, I don't guess Dad trusted me to work anywhere, so I just got to go. But anyway, it was a different time there too. But those are my memories of downtown. Always getting to that was even growing up when my mom. As we got older, Saturday was our day to go downtown and look at every store downtown, and there were several places to shop. And
everybody knew you and your
Yeah.
parents, so you didn't misbehave. Your parents would find out about it.
And they did. So they, if I ever did anything, there was always a call, Daisy, you know, and usually it was the people at the telephone center. You know, that's on. What is it, San Antonio Street now, and that building's still there, but it's a lawyer shop. But that, you know, you still had party lines, and that was kind of cool, you know, give me number 447, and they do it, and plug in. I got to go because our great aunt was working there, and so she would plug in, show us how it all worked. But it was funny because sometimes they'd come on the line, like Beba said, they'd call and say, the war's over. Well, they still did that even when I was a little girl. They would say, my grandmother would call and say, can you get Ola for me? And they'd plug it in. They knew who Ola was. And so, because they were all related. So.
Did you guys listen in on the party line, listen in on other people's conversations?
I don't recall us doing that very often.
I do.
don't.
I remembered a lot. I did, because my friends would come over, or we'd go there, especially in Martindale. That was really fun, because I had a lot of friends that lived in Martindale, and they'd pick up and we'd listen for a few seconds, and then that was it. I mean, it's not like I remember anything that went on. It wasn't anything important, but usually you could hear when somebody picked up. And
so you went on Ginger's, you were a chaperone on Ginger's dates?
And my brother's, yes.
Tell
I got
me
to
about
sit in the
that.
back. Yeah, that was so much fun. I had a great time. Well, see, I would be at the gate, you know, pulling the gate back and forth, crying, and they had such good hearts that they'd say, okay, you get to come. And so I remember I went on a date with my sister, and that was, you know, pretty nice and quiet. I don't even know where we went, but with my brother, you know, we'd go to the drive-in. I can't remember the name of the drive-in, but it was fun. And then we go to Walling's Creamery, and that was well, they said they were in band a while ago, and my sister was a majorette, my brother was in band, and when his senior year, I guess it was, I was the mascot. And so that was kind of cool because we're all dressed in I was going to bring a picture, but we still haven't found that picture. But we get to go, and after the game, they would take me with them, and because they had to, you know, they could stay out later probably if they had me with them. Once I go home, it's time for them to go home. So I got to stay out. But it was so much fun because they would stick me up on the counter at Walling's Creamery, and I remember my brother just cutting a rug in there dancing. They had a little dance part, and they would dance, and I would get hamburger and french fries, and you know, I'm still a hamburger person today. So
what did the mascot uniform look like?
It looked just like the majorette ones. It was white and it had a little flare skirt with I still have it. I actually still have it, and my boots. You know, I never throw anything away, so I've still got that though.
So that was big fun.
It was.
Going
It
to
was-
all the games.
It was so much fun, and my mother reminded me of the time that we were marching down the field. I guess I missed the practice. I didn't always get the practices because my mom would have to come pick me up from school early, and so we're at the game here at the stadium, which is not the same stadium now, but the same place, and they were marching down the field, and then the band turns and comes back, and I think I'm still going down the field. And so then somebody had to holler at me or something. I don't know what they did, but anyway, those were some fond memories for me as a little kid, because I became a twirler myself later on, and so it was neat that I could say, oh, I got my start, you know, when they were in high school. So
And being a kid, going to all the
Being a
high
kid,
school
I
stuff,
know.
that was pretty neat.
I really thought I was a big kid. I mean, I didn't realize, in fact, when I was at Campus Elementary, Gigi remembers this probably. Anyway, my mother had to stop me because the teacher called and said, Brenda is walking all the college kids. I would go up to the top. Right now, I think it's the math building going down towards the geography building, but I would meet them at the top. Instead of playing with all my friends, I'd say, would you like a date with my sister or my brother? And so I'd walk them all the way down. I'd tell them all about them. And then we get down to the end, and you know, the teacher's on duty. Where's Brenda? I'm down at the horses because I've walked these college kids all the way down. And I said, now our phone number is this. You can call. And so I was not
Did
that
you
they
go
needed,
on any of those
I
dates?
don't recall going on any
no,
of the dates.
no, but it was. I'm sure those people think, who is that little weirdo down there walking us down? But I did, you know, try to get them a blind date. It don't, you know.
I know she used to say, do you know my Bubba?
Yeah,
My Bubba.
I know. Well, I thought that they would certainly be known, and they probably did if I'd said the right name. But
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was a different time,
yeah,
Well,
more relaxing.
back just
I guess.
before
Yes.
Ginger sprung a leak in her little Austin,
Oh yes, I did. I sprung it.
and so we had to do something about that and get another vehicle.
Don't tell them how you sprung the leak.
Yeah, tell.
Well, one of my friends, Roger Wilson, decided he'd check to see if the gun was loaded, and he shot a hole through the We hunted a lot, and he shot a hole through the.
But he wouldn't tell me that he shot a hole. I said, my car's dripping. It was raining and the water was dripping and it hadn't been doing that. And he said, well, you just never noticed it. But sometime later, did find out that they had shot a hole through the top of the car, and then they put tape over it trying to keep it from.
I had to wait till Roger got out of town because Daddy put.
he wouldn't have been happy.
But then she bought a little.
I had a Renault, but that was later.
No, I'm a little Ford first.
Well, the
Yeah,
little
I fixed
Ford
it.
you wrecked it.
I
That was
fixed
my
it up
first
for
car.
her. And fixed it up with a rumble seat and everything in the back. It's a 39 Ford. Repainted it, got it all running good. And I decided I wanted to borrow it one night, and I did. And Harry Max and I was going up. I'm trying to think of the name of that street. Roger Street. And Miss Reed has some railroad ties,
Metal.
metal railroad ties embedded right there on the corner.
Uh-oh.
She was our math teacher at that time, and anyway, we were going up to study at his uncle's house, and I hit the corner a little too sharp, and that ended that little automobile. But
Never got to drive it again. Bent the frame.
it put a big knot on Harry's
No
head.
wonder your daddy had to have so many businesses. He
Yeah,
he had to buy a lot of cars for you.
he
Yeah.
probably worked it off. I mentioned.
What was your first car, Brenda?
Well, my first car was the one that my brother got for me, and it was it a Chevrolet 49?
52.
52 Chevrolet, yeah. And I was so proud of that car. It was a great car. But it was old, but it did the trick, and I could put a lot of people in there, and people would fit in the trunk, because when we went to the drive-in, you got to go in the drive-in and you paid like a little price for everybody. So we'd stop at the hot dog stand, and which is still in existence today, different location, and we tank up on our hot dogs and whatever, and then we drive in there and pay our $2 or whatever, and then go in there, and then everybody would pile out of the car in the trunk. So it was fun. We did that with everybody's car, not just mine, but that trunk was nice and large because several people fit in it.
Do you remember any memorable events that happened in San Marcos, like floods or any things that impacted the town?
We did have some floods. I do remember the one they had out at Rio Vista, all those houses out there.
Well, there used to be, but yeah.
Well, some of them are still there, aren't they? Out there. Right.
Yeah, maybe. I think you're talking about the ones that are right along the river, right? Because I think it washed them away. One of those floods.
It was what rained, and you see appliances floating down the water. And then Roy worked for Stokes, and that one that was right on the river, it went up on the second story of those apartments there.
Right, it was in the 70s.
When you go across
70,
the bridge.
72,
Yeah.
80.
But it used to, I've seen it up going out toward Walmart, that bridge, it's been up to the top of that before.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in 57, we had, or 58 rather, we had a good one. And then in 52, it was probably one of the worst ones we've had that the Blanco come down. But then, of course, we had the 70, the 72, the 80, all those. But
So you guys you graduated from high school, and Roy and Brenda stayed here, and Ginger, you moved away. You weren't born here. You got out of here, huh?
Well, Roy left. He moved to Nacogdoches.
yeah,
Right
I
after
went to
he and
work for
Ann got
Stokes, and
married.
they transferred me to, I was in the field at that time, and sent me to Nacogdoches up there, and I just got married, and we just fixed the house up, and they decided they'd send me, so I didn't get to use the house. But anyway, sent us to Nacogdoches and built 4 buildings up there. I was the engineer on the job and a labor foreman, and later assistant superintendent at that time. Moved to Temple, and from Temple to Denton, same thing, and from Denton to Dallas, from Dallas to San Antonio, and back to San Marcos.
You've been in San Marcos a while, though.
Yeah, since
This last time.
Yes, last 68.
And you graduated from high school, Brenda. What did you do?
During school, or
You went to college.
I went to college and became a teacher, and I've been a teacher. This is my 44th year to be
You went to
teaching.
college here in San Marcos?
Yes, I did. I was really glad when I graduated because I hated those hills. It was it was torture going up and down there. But yeah, I went to school here, and I've been a teacher. I taught in New Braunfels for a few years, and then I came to San Marcos and taught. So.
She was glad to go to college because she could wear her little uniform that she had when she was mascot.
Yeah, yeah, I could, but I was a twirler at Texas State, and there was a big group of them called the Bob Kittens. That's what they called, like they had the Strutters and they had the Bob Kittens, and they were in existence for about 20 years, and then the lady that did that moved away, and so that kind of fell over, and then there were just people that were single twirlers.
When you went to college here, did you live at home or on the campus?
I lived at home, and I was thrilled to do it. I'm a homebody anyway, but I lived there. I had a lot of friends somebody was renting a house right behind us and wanted us to live there, wanted me to live there, and I said, now I'm going to pay you money every month for me to walk out my back door and go to your house. I don't think that's going to work, but I'll come and see you, but most of my friends lived at home. I didn't have very many friends that lived on campus.
The college, Southwest Texas, had how many students back then?
Maybe 10,000 or
Yeah,
less.
when I started in 56, 1,800.
Yeah, it was very small. It was kind of like a big high school,
And a lot of kids that grew up here went on to college.
Yeah. A lot of them did, but some of them went
What year did you graduate from college?
72. 71 or 72. I don't know which one it was right now. I can't remember. But I was going to mention a while ago about where we lived. There was another house that we lived in that we didn't bring that up, if it's okay that I
Yes.
say that. Anyway, my mom and dad had some land off Ranch Road 12. You know that we'd already talked about that one house, and there were 5 houses that were called the Perkins Edition. Well, my dad he had his 2 restaurants at the time going, and the base was still going on. And so he decided to open up a housing addition called Oak Heights. And on the streets, I always thought it was so cool. I tell my kids at school, because we do community stuff, and how that changes in the community. And so Franklin Drive is named after my brother, Roy Franklin, and Ginger LaRue, that LaRue is her middle name, and that last street in that edition is named after her. And the middle one was named after me, Dale. My mother was really big on cowboys. Okay, so it was Lash LaRue, Dale Evans, Roy, Roy Rogers. Anyway, but then the last street is Perkins Street, and so that's our family street. So it connects all of them. So I just think that's a neat story, and we lived there in this rock house that was, my dad left the big tree in the middle of the road, so it'd be called Oak Heights, and I think that was a trial, probably trying to get that moved. Get that to stay there. But it was just always neat, and I've only lived 2.5 miles from that house my entire life. We've moved many times all over town, but no more than 2.5 miles. So, and now I'm right next door to it. So I'm getting up there too. So it's fun. It's kind of funny. Everybody else has traveled around, and, I don't really have any regrets about not going anywhere. I've always loved it here in San Marcos, and, have a lot of history here. So it's fun teaching the kids and be able to tell them stuff like that, the changes that we've seen over time.
The Oak Heights, Daddy built those first houses with the Perkins Edition in a gentleman named Lovehart, and then Dr. Lovelady, they wanted to build a house, so Daddy went and opened up that front, and then Dr. Lovelady wanted him to open up the back, and open up the back, and so he went into the city and told him what we were going to do. Well, he had to do it, put the sewer and the water and the streets in to their specs, curb and gutter, and the areas he was going to open up at the time, and that they would reimburse him. And this city manager at the time, Mr. Fuller, and Daddy got it. He did it all. He went and paid, got the work done, got the streets, got Oak Heights opened up, put all the streets, curb and gutter, and sewer and water, and then went down to get to settle up with the city, and the city said, "Well, we can't pay you. We won't pay you because the base may move out. It looked like they're going to move out." Mr. Walker and Mr. Collin were his lawyers at the time, but Mr. Walker advised him, I think, at the time to take bankruptcy or chapter, because he had to pay all these people. And my dad said no, they didn't balk when I asked them to come do the work, and I'm going to pay them. So he had to sell the 2 restaurants they had and the little barbecue place, and which he still kept it open, although he had the big barbecue place. He had to sell those. He had to sell the place at Wimberley, and we were buying the old Perkins estate down out in New Valley, and he had to turn it back to him. And then the one in Westover, where we moved to after she was born, he had to sell it, and he had to start selling Oak Heights. And it's hard to sell things when you have to. You have to sell it for a little bit on the dollar, and people know it, and they take it, which is, you can't blame them, it's good business. But anyway, it broke my dad and my mother for everything they've done. They lost everything they had, and I have not been too fond, even though I live here and I think the world of San Marcos, but the the things they can do to people, I do not think a lot of, and it's not correct. We never live that way, and most of them are new people that move in here, and they don't know how the town was grown.
They have selective memories.
But
Yeah.
he paid everybody. That's the
Your
key.
dad sounded amazing, and he did make a wonderful impression, a lasting impression on this town your family has made.
He did pay everybody. He didn't know anybody at that time, and of course
That was
he
a different world back then when people stood behind their word. Imagine that.
Well, a lot of them that he helped didn't pay him, so. But that's beside the point. That's the kind of guy he was. He was high tempered, I can tell you that. But he would not try to abuse anybody.
Sounds like an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts about growing up here, Ginger?
No, I don't think I have anything else. All my secrets are out of the bag, I think.
Do what now?
Anything else?
I said all my secrets are out of the bag.
You know what? Used to take Brenda with me quite a bit. I had to, you know. And I'd bring her up here. We had up here on Oak Heights. We had that was where we live now, and a big tree, and we had hogs up there. We had some cattle up there, and we had horses, and we had some goats up that way up there. And I'd go up there to feed them in the afternoon. That was one of my jobs, but I'd have to take her with me. And which is fine, but I'd roll my window down my little Studebaker about so far, and I'll get out and open the gate. At this time, we had already given the part to the cemetery, the front part of our land to the cemetery. Daddy gave it to him, but this is before he went broke. I mean,
Where the city
we're talking
cemetery
we're
is
talking
now?
about
Yes,
in
it's
the mid-50s, you know.
it's a strip of land. Well, there's more, but part of it is called now the Tower Edition, but it was actually my dad's land.
Yeah, and but I'd get out at the gate and open it up and go into. This day I got out the gate and come back and she wasn't in the car. I don't know where she went to. And come around and find her on the other side of the car, standing there beside the car on her head. She would come out and slid right down and get on her head. And I thought that's what been wrong with her ever since.
How about you, Brenda? Final thoughts? What a wonderful way you grew
I
up with
know.
older big sister and brother. You
They
had
just, they took care of us, and I have to say that, when my dad and mom were going through that tough time, they were resilient, but it took them a little while to gather back together. And I remember my brother and sister were going into college, and so they had rented a little house on Lindsay Street, and it was a very little house, and they invited us. Maybe they invited us, but I think they invited us for us to come and live with them for a little while. So we were all like in a 1 or 2 bedroom little tiny house. And it was just so neat because they took care of us. We were family, and we took care of each other.
I mean, I would love to live in those days. I would like for the people to go back and see how the people took care of everybody. I mean, there's people that didn't pay us, and there's people like that city manager and stuff. You have those, but they're outsiders.
You didn't lock your doors. You left your keys under your mat.
Oh, I never locked mine.
We never locked the doors.
You want to talk about that? I had her, was going on a date, and had her in my car, and my date, and I forgot my billfold, so I had to go back to my house. We were living in Westover at that time to get my billfold. And when I did, I went in the front door and I walked in there where my billfold was in my bedroom, and there was somebody in there. Well, I guess I scared him as bad as he scared me, because I went out the front door and he went out the back, and our neighbor, Friday Ellis, at that time, saw him and hollered at me and told me to go around the other side and see if I. And he was going to go out the back after him, and we don't know who it was.
But you didn't hear a lot of that back then. Now it might be more commonplace.
But that was an outsider. He wasn't from here. He'd come in but
Friday used to always do a skit at all the rodeos where He milked the donkey or something.
Yeah. Well, he'd go out there. We were out of water. He said, the donkey's out of water. We got to find some water. So he'd take the bucket and go around hanging over the donkey's head, get back there and pump his tail, and get up and pour the water out on the ground. Well, before he had a false bottom in it, of course, and when he put it over the donkey's head, he'd fix it where it would pour out. But yeah, I mean, us as kids, well, we just couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe that. No, pumping it.
It was interesting.
It was a fun time back then.
A lot of rodeos and stuff. I mean, everybody went and had a good time.
If it was a community event, then everybody went. It wasn't like just a few people would attend, or you had to
Well, we
encourage them.
didn't have as much excitement. So anything that came to town
Yes,
was excitement for us.
Right.
Because there wasn't that much going on
Right.
most of the time.
But you know, back then, I did want to mention this because we don't have it anymore, but Ocarina was a real big part of my life growing up, and with my own children, because we get to go out there and see the pigs swimming and the little mermaids. And that was my first real job, was working at Ocarina, not as a mermaid, but I worked in Texana Village feeding the alligators. That was part of my job. And so that wasn't too good, but anyway, but that was a fun time for us. And anytime you wanted to take your kids out or have a good time, we're so lucky to have two little theme parks, Wonder World and Ocarina. And so we miss that. The Bisms definitely miss Ocarina. It's a nice place, but
Right.
we miss it. But I've only lived 2.5 miles from that house my entire life. We've moved many times all over town, but no more than 2.5 miles. So, and now I'm right next door to it, so I'm getting up there too. So it's fun. It's kind of funny. Everybody else has traveled around, and I don't really have any regrets about not going anywhere. I've always loved it here in San Marcos, and have a lot of history here. So it's fun teaching the kids and be able to tell them stuff like that. The changes that we've seen over time.
Well, thank y'all so much. It's an interesting childhood you guys had here in San Marcos.